As the saying goes, two heads are often better than one. Well, when it comes to the Detroit Lions, they've been looking for another edge rusher to pair opposite of Aiden Hutchinson. But what if they already have the guy that they've been looking for? We're going to talk about it in this episode, folks. So stay tuned.
What are we? What makes us what we are? And what we're going to be? It's grit. It's what we started with last year, guys. It doesn't matter if you have one ass cheek and three toes. I will beat your ass.
Can definitely compete with the big dogs.
10, 5, end zone, touchdown, Detroit Lions.
You guys are unbelievable, man. I'm telling you.
We are driven by Detroit.
Hello, all Lions fans, and welcome on back to yet another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. I'm your host, David T. Pike, and as always, we're diving on in. So, here's the thing, folks. For many Lions fans, hopes are obviously very, very high that this is the year that we can finally not only go to a Super Bowl, get there, but we can also win it for the first time. There's a lot of hope. There's a lot of optimism. There is a lot of, expectation that the Lions are really going to do something very spectacular, very special this year. Now, that's what we're expecting. That's what we're hoping for this year. But, again, as a historian, I have always been of the mind where it's like, hey, you know what? You can't appreciate where you're at unless you kind of look back at where you came from. Well, when we take a look over the last 3 years, we as fans have witnessed this team have a full transformation process of where the roster used to be pretty much nothing more than just like a skeleton, just barely held together by a couple of players. But now we have seen how that roster that used to be back in 2021 has become one of the most richest, one of the most, in-depth rosters in terms of talent and having a very, very bright future. And the way I can look at it now is that, hey, you take a look at this roster, it not only has some pieces right now that are developing that are going to become some of the best players in the game, it already has some of the best players in the game on this roster. And you have to think about it. For some of the best players that we have, you just take a look at it. We have Penei Sewell, arguably considered one of the best tackles in the game on either left or right. We have Frank Ragnow, probably the best center in the game, the best center for me without a doubt. You have Amon-Ra St. Brown, a top 10 wide receiver. Jared Goff, a top 10 quarterback. Sam Laporta, a top 3 tight end. Aiden Hutchinson, top 10 edge rusher. So you have some of the best players already in the NFL on the roster. But then again, like I said, we have some of the best young stars that are also growing, getting better, and they're primed to break out here very, very soon. Or they've already kind of broken out, but there's more we can get out of them, such as Jahmyr Gibbs, Jack Campbell, Brian Branch, Terrion Arnold, Jameson Williams, Enos Rakestraw. These are guys that we are either developing currently right now and hoping that they're going to break out, or they've already started to break out and they're just primed for more. But when you take a look at like what I just said, the Lions have clearly a lot of talent on this roster. It is a very in-depth roster. But despite the great achievements that the Lions have had in overhauling the roster and getting the team to where it is, making it this very, very powerful unit that we have not had a whole lot of experience dealing with over the course of the history of the Lions, there are a few areas that have, how should I put this? They've not been addressed nearly as much or as thoroughly as others in some people's opinions. Because, again, when we're talking about football here, we're talking about people having varying opinions about whether or not something has been done correctly, whether something has been done enough. And again, that's part of the beauty of football. That's part of the beauty of having these conversations. And when it comes to the Lions roster, there are certain positions on the roster that some people think, this hasn't been addressed nearly as much. It still needs an upgrade. Well, one of those positions that has come under quite a heavy amount of scrutiny and is still under a bit of scrutiny is the edge position opposite of Aiden Hutchinson. Now, as I just clearly said, Aiden Hutchinson is one of the best edge rushers in the game. And that's not going to change anytime soon. And if you think about it, when Brad Holmes made the investment to go out and get Aiden Hutchinson, that was considered one of his best picks because everybody knew Aiden Hutchinson was going to be a pretty good pick. The question was whether or not the Lions were realistically going to have a chance to get him, bring the homegrown product from U of M, from Michigan, be able to keep him here in Michigan. We didn't know if we were going to get a chance to do that because the Jaguars held the number 1 pick in that draft, and there was kind of like a 50-50 coin toss over whether or not the Jaguars were going to take Travon Walker or if they were going to go with Aiden Hutchinson. Thankfully for us, the Lions, they decided to go with Travon Walker, and we got Aiden Hutchinson. And let's be fair and honest here. Ever since we've gotten Aiden Hutchinson, that pick has immensely paid off for us extremely well. I mean, it paid off for us immediately, and it's continued to pay off for us. Let's just think about it. In the 2 years that Aiden Hutchinson has been with the Detroit Lions, he has garnered 70 tackles. He has 21 sacks. He has 3 forced fumbles. He has 4 interceptions, 23 tackles for loss, 92 total quarterback pressures, and he has a 16.9% win rate when it comes to the pass rushing category. If you think about that, that right there is a pretty damn impressive resume just for 2 years worth of work. But when you start actually taking a look at those numbers that Aiden Hutchinson has provided, and then you start to compare them to the other edge rushers that were taken in the very first round that Aiden Hutchinson was drafted in, you start to get a much more the comparison is like almost not even fair. When you start comparing Aiden Hutchinson's production, his quality of stats to the other guys that were drafted in the same draft that he was in the first round, Aiden Hutchinson wins in a landslide. It's a no contest here. And let's just take a look at that so you guys can see what I'm talking about here. Let's take a look at the guy that was drafted just before Aiden Hutchinson, Travon Walker. Take a look at Walker's stats. Walker has 101 tackles. So, okay, he's got more tackles than Aiden Hutchinson, but he's only got 13.5 sacks. He only has 1 forced fumble. He only has 1 interception. He only has 15 tackles for loss. He only has 51 pressures. And his pass rush win percentage rate is about half of what Aiden Hutchinson's is. So, Travon Walker only has 1 statistical category that's better than Aiden Hutchinson's, and it's not the one that is most important in this conversation, which is the ability to get after the quarterback in terms of sacks and also winning at the point of attack, which is the pass rush win rate. Man, that is a hard thing to say. Now we move off of Travon Walker in comparison to Hutchinson. Let's move on to Kayvon Thibodeaux, a guy that a lot of Lions fans thought that the Lions were going to go after because of the connection that Brad Holmes had to the West Coast in terms of Oregon, in terms of all that nonsense, because that was where Thibodeaux was coming from. When you take a look at Thibodeaux actually is a little bit interesting here. He has more tackles than Aiden Hutchinson, like Walker with 99 tackles. But again, the sacks are lacking. He only has 15.5 sacks. But Thibodeaux has more forced fumbles. He has 5 forced fumbles, 0 interceptions, 18 tackles for loss, 53 pressures, and he has an 8% pass rush win rate. So again, Thibodeaux has more tackles, he has more forced fumbles. But again, in every other statistical category, Aiden Hutchinson destroys him. Then you take a look at Karlaftis, the other guy that was in that draft. George Karlaftis, 80 tackles, so again, more than Hutch, 16.5 sacks, 1 forced fumble, no interceptions, 15 tackles for loss, 56 pressures, 10.8% pass rush win rate. So again, when you take a look at what is going on here, you're very clearly seeing a pattern here. When it comes to the ability to get after the quarterback, Aiden Hutchinson, by far and in large, has absolutely dominated the other guys that were from the draft. And that's not even the last one. The last guy in the draft that was also there was Jermaine Johnson. Jermaine Johnson, over the course of his 2 years, 84 tackles, 10 sacks, 1 forced fumble, 1 interception, 14 tackles for loss, 31 pressures, and a 12.4% pass rush win rate. And that's only from 2023 because 2022 he really didn't play a whole lot. So think about it. Out of all of his peers, Aiden Hutchinson is head and shoulders above them all. Aiden Hutchinson clearly is the best edge rusher that came out of the 2022 NFL draft class. That's not even up for debate at this point. And when you think about it, Aiden Hutchinson has proven that because he's first out of all of his peers in terms of sacks. The next closest is 4.5 short of him. He's first out of all of them in terms of tackles for loss. The next closest is 5 short of him. He's second in forced fumbles, first in interceptions. The next closest is 3 short. He's first in total pressures, with the next closest being 36 short of him. And he's first in pass rush win rate, with the next closest being 4.5% short of him. Like I said, it's no contest. Aiden Hutchinson clearly blows them all out of the water. And we've known how good, how prolific, how just absolutely awesome Aiden Hutchinson is as a player. And he, like I said, is one of the best edge rushers in the game. But the problem is his partner. Who in the hell is going to play opposite of him? That's where we get into the controversy. That is where people have really been having a problem with Brad Holmes and the whole roster, because they're like, okay, great, we have Aiden Hutchinson. But everybody also is like, we need somebody opposite of Hutchinson so that way this defense can really take off and we can really amplify the pressure on opposing quarterbacks. Now, currently as it stands, opposite of Aiden Hutchinson, there is a conglomeration of guys like James Houston, Marcus Davenport, and Matthew Betts. There are one of 2 questions that are going into this whole category. The first is, one, out of those 3 guys, who starts? And the second one is, what can we expect from those guys? Well, here's the thing. The reason why I'm saying this is because I sincerely doubt that Brad Holmes is going to add anybody else. And quite frankly, I don't think he should. Because in my personal opinion, out of all the 3 that are operating in this kind of, little conglomeration that we have opposite of Aiden Hutchinson, you have to think about what they have to offer in terms of the situation that they find themselves on the roster. First and foremost, all 3 of them right now are operating on a very similar playing field in the fact that they all have 1-year deals right now. Think about it. Matthew Betts was brought in as a futures contract. Okay, he's operating on a very short lease. The Lions want to see what he can do. Same thing with Marcus Davenport. He's operating on a 1-year contract. And if I recall correctly, the same thing is the case for James Houston. So each one of them are kind of operating on short leashes here. It's kind of like, hey, we're waiting for you to prove it to us kind of a moment, kind of a deal. But each one has a different background within the side of that 1-year moment that they have. And that's where I think we can find who's the best person for the starting job. And that, for me, is Matthew Betts. Now, here's my thought process as to why I have Matthew Betts being the best option here. First and foremost, we have to go back to the main reason why a lot of people were very high on Betts when we got him in the first place. The guy had absolutely amazing production in the Canadian Football League. While the CFL has been considered largely for the last, however long, an inferior league to that of the NFL, it still is a professional football league. The NFL has garnered some players from the CFL that have gone on to have absolutely magnificent careers in the NFL. But you still cannot overlook Betts' production in the freaking CFL as an edge rusher. He had 18 sacks last year in the CFL. That's hard to overlook. That's hard to freaking produce. Even in the CFL, that's hard to do. So it's like, okay, here. This is a guy that clearly knows how to get after the quarterback. And when you take a look at that amazing production, neither Houston nor Davenport has come even remotely close at any point in their career at any one season to matching that 18 sacks. Think about it. Houston's best season was the very first year that we had him, which he had 8 sacks, 8.5 sacks, something like that. You take a look at Davenport, the best year he's ever had was 9. So both of them are at half of the production in one professional season, even though it was in the NFL, in comparison to Betts at 18. So think about it. That right there already shows that Betts at least should be given the higher, in my opinion, the higher chance to go out and do something because the production is much higher, even if it is from the Canadian Football League. Then you have to think about it from this perspective. Again, I'm a historical nut. I'm a historical, person. You have to think about it from this perspective. There's a guy that used to play a couple of years ago, but back in the late 2000s, 2010s, this guy was prolific. Cameron Wake. For anyone who actually remembers that name, give yourself a bit of a pat on the back. But the reason I bring up the name is because out of all the things about him, there is a huge similarity to Cameron Wake and to Matthew Betts. And here's where the similarity comes from. First and foremost, we have to understand this. Matthew Betts won what is known as the CFL Most Outstanding Defensive Player Award last year. And that was with the British Columbia Lions, or as they just go by, the BC Lions. Well, look at this. Cameron Wake, the guy I'm comparing him to, was also on the BC Lions, and he won that very same award for 2 straight years in a row, 2007 and 2008. Now, here's some other similarities here. Did you know, like we already know, Matthew Betts was on a practice squad with the Bears before he went to the CFL. He didn't make it with the Bears. Well, did you know that Cameron Wake did the exact same thing? He was a practice squad player for the New York Giants before he went to the CFL. That's very interesting. So not only did Betts and Wake play on the exact same team in the CFL, they won the exact same award in the CFL, but they started their professional football careers the exact same way. Practice squad players for a team before they went to the Canadian ranks. Oh, there's even more here. Think about this. Both played and won the CFL at pretty much defensive MVP award for the BC Lions, like I said. And they led the CFL in sacks each year that they won the award. Like I said, in 2023, Betts led the CFL in 18 sacks. When Cameron Wake won the award in 2007 and 2008, he had 16 sacks in 7, and he had 23 sacks in 08. So right there, again, you're finding more similarities. Then you take a look at their builds. You take a look at their measurables. Cameron Wake was at 6'3", 263 pounds. Matthew Betts is at 6'3", 250 pounds. Man, these guys sound like almost carbon copies of one another. But then you start taking a look how they can actually do on a football field. Cameron Wake ran a 40-yard dash at 4.65. He had a bench of 20 repetitions. And he had a 20-yard shuttle of 4.13. Take a look at Betts. Betts' 40-yard dash is a 4.7. His bench press repetitions was 23. His 20-yard shuttle was a 4.29. There's not much real similarity between the two guys. Not much difference. There's a lot of similarity. Pardon me, I had that backwards. So, why is the comparison that I'm making here extremely significant? Betts with Cameron Wake. Here's the reason why. Other than the extreme similarities between their history as far as where they played in the Canadian ranks, and also in terms of their size, their measurables, and everything else, take a look at what Cameron Wake did in his entire time in the NFL. He had 100 sacks. He had 99 tackles for loss. He was a 5-time Pro Bowl player, and he was a 4-time All-Pro. Now, why is that significant? The reason why it's significant is because Cameron Wake came into the NFL, and I think he was 27, 28 years old. He only played 11 years. Half the time that he was in the NFL, he went to Pro Bowls and was an All-Pro level player. That's pretty damn significant. That's huge. So let's just think about this. If that's what Cameron Wake did while he was playing in the NFL, let's just think about it from the terms of Matthew Betts here. If Matthew Betts can match, or if he can't match, just, get maybe 75% of what Wake was able to do in the NFL, then the Lions could have arguably the best edge rushing tandem in the NFL for the foreseeable future. Because, again, when you see a guy like what Matthew Betts was able to do in the CFL, and there's a historical piece of example, a piece of history in the past that shows that, hey, this is what he could turn out to be, then you could realistically start seeing, we already know what kind of player Aiden Hutchinson is. I made sure to explain that first. But then when you take that and you compare it with what Cameron Wake was and what Matthew Betts could be, man, that is a really tantalizing thought process. That is a really tantalizing offer for the Lions. And then when you couple all of that with the two-headed edge rushing tandem. Man, I got a lot of tongue twisters in this episode. But when you have that two-headed edge rushing tandem, and then with Betts and Hutch doing their thing, now you have the Lions having this significant investment in the Lions secondary, going out and getting Terry and Arnold, drafting Enos Rakestraw, all the other pieces that they brought in over the last couple of years through the draft as well. Then you have the makings of not only a very competitive defense, but a very scary defense, potentially. A suffocating run defense that we saw last year that had the second best rush defense in the NFL. A shutdown pass defense, potentially, and a ferocious pass rush. And thus, this is something I wanted to put in at the very end, because I thought this up. Everyone wants to talk about nicknames. And with that, you have what I like to call the 3-1-3 defense being born. Now, why do I call it that? Well, first and foremost, we have to understand something. The Detroit area code in Michigan is 313. Well, what does the 3-1-3 stand for in this case? The first 3 stands for 3 and out. That's what every defense wants, is a 3 and out. What does the 1 stand for? Pretty simple in my opinion, 1 pride. But what's the last 3 stand for? The 3 Ds, defend, dominate, destroy. That right there, I think, is a pretty good nickname for our defense if you think about it. The 3-1-3 defense. 3 and out, 1 pride, and the 3 big Ds. Defend, dominate, and destroy. That's just my personal thought process. I don't know if it's going to catch on. I sincerely doubt that it would, but that's just what I personally think. And I'm probably going to expand upon that later on in a show episode, but I just thought it was a really cool thought process that I came up with. I don't know if anyone else has, but anyway, the point of the matter is getting back to the actual episode. I take a look at what Matthew Betts could potentially be, especially if the Lions are seriously invested in him as I think they are. If you get Betts to be the kind of player that Cameron Wake used to be in the NFL, then you pair him opposite of Aiden Hutchinson with all the other pieces that we have on this defense, you really have something potentially special that you could see happen. You really have something that could really be impressive in the NFL. And like I said, if it all pans out, the Lions could have a very formidable edge rushing tandem for the next couple of years, maybe even almost a decade, depending upon how long Betts plays. But I just figured I'd put this together just to kind of give a break from the Jared Goff context and all the conversation that we've been having about his contract, because I have been talking about that quite a bit lately, and I wanted to talk about something else. So decided to kind of switch gears, kind of go in a different direction here. Hopefully you guys all appreciate it. But with that having been said, I think I'm going to end this segment and just say thank you all once again for watching another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. If you like what you saw, by all means, I highly encourage y'all to watch the next episode. Also encourage y'all to do one of these 3 things: like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. If by chance you subscribed in the past, you forgot to do so at the time, or you just subscribed and you've not yet had a chance to do so, please, 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 I highly encourage y'all to subscribe. But I also encourage y'all to make sure you hit that bell notification icon as well, so that way as soon as I push something out, you guys get that notification that something new is out, and you guys can come right back to the channel. Again, that is what we want to make sure you guys keep doing, so that way you guys never miss any more content that I push out. I also encourage y'all, please, to share this content with your Lions friends and family members. Share it here on YouTube, share it on Twitter, share it on Facebook, share it anywhere and everywhere you can with everybody and anybody that you can. The more we can share it, the greater the channel grows and spreads. And with that being said to everybody, I hope y'all are having a blessed day. I hope y'all are doing absolutely fantastic in your world. I hope everything is going great for you. You got something that makes you happy, something that makes you smile. And furthermore, I also hope you enjoyed the content. And with that, I just want to say to everybody, God bless. I hope y'all are doing well. And until the next time we meet, I'll see you all in the very next episode.